Hello everyone, welcome to the Ahdurin region. I'm your host Ahdurin himself, back with another episode of the Ace Attorney series. Wigglytuff's got some word of encouragement there if you want to follow those. Last episode down in the description below for the playlist. Today, Gant is on trial. Maybe. We're okay, low key, we kind of believe he's the murderer and we're trying to prove it here. Whether or not that's true remains to be seen, but let's find out if we can figure this out now. Let's go. Let's see, what was it now? A jar fragment and a list? For all I know, you could have planted them in my office. Anyway, you can't prove when those pieces of evidence were discovered. They were found after Dark was convicted, and they're worthless. There's no reason I'd participate in a forgery. Rearranging the crime scene wouldn't help me out in any way.
Mr. Wright,
Yes, Your Honor?
when investigating the crime scene, you should have been more careful to observe protocol.
You understand that I am the chief of police, right? There will be consequences. Oh, great. Indeed, I believe I will press charges, so you won't make the same mistake again.
My apologies, Chief, but would you mind waiting until tomorrow for that? Today is, well, you know.
All right, Edgy. In return, though...
I know. That place, right?
Huh? Are these guys telepathic? They making deals here? Judge, I thought Edgeworth wasn't supposed to make deals. Now you're making deals with the witnesses, huh? Yeah, done. All right, anyway, let's get going through this. For all I know, you could have planted them in my office. Could I? Could I really? I'd appreciate it if you stopped making these ridiculous allegations. Yes, you do have a point. You wouldn't have the guts to do something like that. Correct. I agree. I would not have the guts to forge evidence. What? Dang it, Phoenix! I'll have you know, back in the day, I once broke into a cattle ranch and tipped...
Mr. Wright, what are you saying?
Anyway, you can't prove you didn't carry in the evidence, can you? Yeah, proof to the contrary. You're gonna need it later. Later? What are you talking about? What else? Talking about when Wrighto's prints are found. Yes, they're found inside my safe. It would prove his investigation was illegal. Never faced anyone as slimy as this guy. I faced Manfred von Karma. Anyway, you can't prove when. I can't? What do you mean by that? This is all purely hypothetical, of course. But suppose I did place those items in my safe. Such an act wouldn't necessarily constitute forgery. Objection! If concealing evidence found at a crime scene isn't forgery... I'm not through speaking yet, Righto. All depends on when the evidence was discovered. Right, if they were found after Dark was convicted, then they're worthless. Are you saying this jar fragment wasn't discovered in the initial investigation? It would appear not. After all, it wasn't listed in the evidence list. For all we know, it could have suddenly materialized the day after Dark was sentenced.
Objection!
Oh, wouldn't that be convenient? Right. Huh? Chief is talking about a possibility, so long as you can't rule that out. Your remarks, however clever they may be, will only succeed in wasting time. Tell me something I don't know, Edgeworth. Come now, Righto! Think about it. You know, relax. There's no reason I'd participate in a forgery. Why would I do that? How could you look me in the eye and say that? Because I'm innocent. Remember? Who was it that murdered Neil?
I'm not sure I care for the word murder here. But in the end, the person responsible for Mr. Marshall's unfortunate demise was Emma Skye.
Well, how do you see? Rearranging the crime scene wouldn't help me out in any way. Really, Chief Gant? At the very least, there is one very large benefit you've reaped from all of this. Oh? I wasn't aware. What is this benefit? That would, of course, be the position you have, Chief of Police.
Oh,
The resolution of the SL9 incident secured your promotion to Chief. That in and of itself is sufficient motive. That's a good one. Huh? Do you really think I'm that incompetent? What do you mean? Even without that case, I was already in line to become the next chief. The resolution of SL9 merely sped up the inevitable a little. Is that true, Edra?
Yes. He was going to be made chief anyway.
God. Be careful when pointing that finger. You might wind up being the one pointed at.
So that means there's only one possible motivation for you to commit forgery. If you didn't do it for yourself, then you did it for someone else.
Don't be silly, Worthy. You know me better than that. There are only 3 people I look out for. Me, myself, and I. There. It's out in the open now. Reggie, would you mind if I change my testimony a little?
By all means, please do.
What are we changing it to now? I wouldn't be anyone's accomplice if there was nothing in it for me. Blech. Okay. Is this gonna go back to the old dialogue or something like that? Oh, something different. Nothing in it for you? Sorry, but the only person I care about is yours truly. That girl. Lana's little sister, was it? If you think I felt sorry for her, you better think again.
You're right. You don't feel sorry for anyone.
Be tough on crime and tough on people. That's how I was raised.
You seem to be lax enough on yourself, though.
Well, that's a good one, Worthy.
Could there have been something in it for him? Given his selfishness, would he have helped someone out?
Well, yeah, isn't the whole point of this is that he was controlling the prosecutor's thing? Right?
True, you might not help out anyone for their sake. But if it would benefit you, you might decide to assist someone.
Mr. Wright, it appears you're positively determined to portray the chief as a nice man who likes to lend people a hand.
That's not what I meant at all. No.
Very well then. Who is this person you believe Chief Gant may have helped forge evidence?
Lana, right? Isn't the whole point that Lana is the chief prosecutor? Because then now you got the dude on the prosecutor side, and he can control the prosecution. Yada yada yada. Right? Music's out this time.
Chief Prosecutor Lana the defendant.
I believe it's quite obvious in light of the circumstances. Emma Skye fell victim to an unfortunate series of events. Who would want to help her more than her own sister, Lana? And as for Chief Gant, he would also have a reason to help Lana if she asked him to. That reason, of course, is self-profit.
Self-profit? What do you mean?
After the SL9 incident was resolved, Lana Skye was appointed chief prosecutor at the prosecutor's office. The person who arranged this job change was you, Chief Gant.
But how would he profit from all of this?
He would be able to use the chief prosecutor as his puppet.
I don't know if I said that properly at all.
Essentially, he would acquire unchecked authority over all investigations.
Do you mean to tell me that despite the chief's formidable appearance, he plays with puppets?
I'm just going to leave. I'm going to have a 2-second, 3-second maybe, just moment of silence. Really, though? No one in the audience. Nobody.
Oh wait, you must mean puppet as in someone forced him to do his bidding. Never mind.
Exactly, Judge. Admit it, Chief. You assisted Lana Skye in forging evidence. Your motive to appoint her as chief prosecutor so you could control her. Righto, my boy. You have quite an imagination. Let me ask you something. What? Do you have any proof of this? That I controlled Lana? For example, is Lana testifying that I've done such a thing? Lana. She's keeping quiet to protect Emma. There's no way she'd testify against Gant.
I'm afraid without any proof, this all amounts to nothing more than mere conjecture.
Unless that is also what happened in this instant.
This instant, which one would that be?
Of course, I'm talking about the murder of Detective Bruce Goodman. The chief prosecutor has been acting strange throughout this entire trial, almost as if someone has been controlling her.
Where are they? You better watch your tongue. I wouldn't want you to get hurt.
Just what do you mean?
What he means, Your Honor, is that the Chief Gant is involved in the murder of Detective Goodman. Not only that, the Chief is now making Lana take the rap to cover up his involvement.
What? What?
Crowd, noise.
Order. I said order. Mr. Wright, you can't be serious.
Huh?
This is an affront to the highest ranking officer in a law enforcement agency.
Judge, you sound younger almost.
To accuse the chief of police of blackmail and murder. That's impossible.
Crowd noises inserted here. Applause, maybe applause? You ain't applausing? Your Honor, I merely was reiterating what Mr. Edgeworth said in easier to understand language.
It's too late, Mr. Wright. There's no turning back for us now.
Looks like he's the one who's decided to go through with this. All right, let's do this.
Can you prove this, Mr. Wright? That the chief, a high-ranking officer of the law, is involved in this murder?
Good question.
Regardless of his rank or title, Chief Gant is just a man. The question is he a criminal? I believe the evidence will tell.
I see. All right, then. Let's see what Mr. Wright's got. And it better be good. Show us this evidence that ties Chief Gant to the murder of Detective Goodman.
All right, they've mentioned high-ranking officer a lot. That leads me to believe we're trying to fill in that top gap right there. So I'm gonna present this.
This is the ID card list.
I'm scared now. The music normally stops. Yes, the one that shows who entered the evidence room on the day of the crime. There was one ID on the list we couldn't determine. We couldn't determine the owner of yesterday. Straight sevens. Sorry, but there's no way you can prove that's my card number. It's your number.
What? How do you know that?
The safe in Chief Gant's office requires a code to open. A 7-digit code.
You don't mean...
I'm afraid so, Your Honor. The code was straight sevens. The same as the remaining ID card number on that list. Chief Gant, you entered the evidence room on the day of the crime. Look at him, he's actually angry for once.
Order! Chief Gant, what do you have to say?
Nothing.
The defense's search of my office was in violation of regulation.
And I will demand Mr. Wright be punished to the maximum extent of the law. But right now, this court demands an explanation from you about the use of this ID card.
Chief Gant, so you admit it. You entered the evidence room on the day of the crime?
What about it? I'm chief of police. Whether it's the evidence room or the bathroom, what's the difference? I can go anywhere I want.
Tell me, when you entered the room, were you alone?
I always go to the bathroom alone, as I do with the evidence room. Detective Goodman wouldn't have happened to be with you that day, would he? Of course not. Why would he be? I hadn't seen him in days. Objection! You hadn't seen him? In days? Chief Gant, I'm afraid you've just undone yourself. On that day, you had to have met with Detective Goodman.
What do you mean? This trial's purpose is to determine Lana Sky's guilt.
No, it isn't, Your Honor.
This trial's purpose is to determine the truth. Dang, I messed up Edward's line right there.
If Chief Gant met the victim on the day of the crime, then we need to determine one thing. What transpired during that meeting?
In that case, Mr. Wright, I'm going to have to ask you for evidence. Show us proof that the victim went to meet Chief Gant on the day of the crime.
Come on, think of something. Think of something. Kind of clueless right now. Wait. Ha ha ha! Half-written document dated 2/21 can only be submitted to the Chief of Police. The lost item reported is...
Take that!
I actually went with the line for once.
Detective Goodman lost his ID card on the day of the crime. Or to be more accurate, Jake Marshall stole it. So Detective Goodman filed out a lost item report. He would have had to give that report to the chief of police.
Yet you are in possession of the report, which means you can't be sure if you filed it.
He filed it. How do I know, you ask? Because he needed to enter the evidence room that day.
He needed to.
Yes, to transfer the evidence out.
Oh,
Detective Goodman took the form to you, Chief Kent. Then, you accompanied the detective to the evidence room.
I accompanied him.
There's no other way the murderer and Detective Goodman could have entered the room.
Hold on, let me guess what you're about to say next. I, the chief of police, murdered poor old Goodman.
Exactly.
but wait. The chief didn't necessarily need to accompany him to the evidence room. He could have just lent him his ID card.
Yes. Now that you mention it, I believe I might have done something of the sort.
Objection!
Sorry, but that's not possible. What? According to the record, your card was only used once. Yet you showed us your ID card earlier. If you had really lent it to Detective Goodman, it would have been found on his body.
No!
Didn't he shock himself? What was that?
Chief Kent, you didn't.
The murder was most likely a spur-of-the-moment crime. No one in their right mind would choose the police department as a place to commit murder. After the murder, he contacted Lana at the prosecutor's office. Why? To dispose of Detective Goodman's body, of course.
Objection!
You're forgetting, Mr. Wright, that the victim's body was discovered in the prosecutor's office parking lot. How did he manage to move it there?
I was at the police department the entire day, you know.
And everyone's aware that Lana stayed at the prosecutor's office after the ceremony. Everyone except me, it seems. Still, you're chief of police. You have an entire police force at your disposal.
Oh, so you think I just ordered an officer to do it? Hey, you, take this here dead body over to the prosecutor's office. I don't think so.
Chief Kent, you left all the evidence we need to prove how you moved the body to the prosecutor's office. All this time, I thought it was a useless clue just taking up space.
How could the chief have moved the body? Mr. Wright, show us this evidence.
To move the victim's body, Chief Kent used this. All right, we're looking for useless evidence. We've used that. Oh, this doesn't count. Use that. It's not this, is it? You asked Edgeworth to drive back a dead body. That has to be it, isn't it? This has to be. This is how he moved Detective Goodman's body.
What's that? A screwdriver. But what does that have to do with this case?
Mr. Edgeworth, think back to the day of the crime. What is this screwdriver doing here? It's here because
Ugh!
I was asked to go. By Chief Kent, no less. He told me he wanted me to keep it here in the prosecutor's office. In any case, on the day of the stabbings, I brought this back here. After the ceremony ended that day, I didn't plan to return to the prosecutor's office. But you did, because Chief Kent asked you to. You mean I... The body was found in the trunk of Mr. Edgeworth's car. I think it's obvious what happened. The body was moved by that car.
Detective Goodman's body was carried in the trunk of Mr. Edgeworth's car.
Yes. Unless, of course, you have another explanation, Chief? Why else would you have asked Mr. Edgeworth to transport evidence from a closed case? There's only one plausible explanation. To transport the body to your accomplice, Miss Lana Skye.
Order! What's going on here? Is there no room for rebuttal to the defense's outrageous accusations?
Think back to the photograph Miss Starr took at the prosecutor's office.
This was not a photograph of the body being stuffed in the trunk to be taken away. It was exactly the opposite.
It is a photo of the body being taken from the trunk.
Chief Gant, please say something.
I believe... Your time's up.
My time's up.
Sorry, Wright, but I'm having lunch with the District Attorney General after this. We have to get going if we're going to make it in time for the early bird special.
Objection!
But the cross-examination isn't finished yet. Remember what I told you earlier. A police chief has all kinds of weapons at his disposal. Weapons? Like the right to refuse to testify. I'm invoking that right now.
What? That is not a right to casually be invoked. There are certain risks to be considered.
Objection!
So you're gonna just run away after all of this?
Run away? Don't make me laugh, Worthy. I stabbed old Goodman. That's what you're saying, right? But if you had any conclusive evidence, you would have presented it by now. Well, You think I had Lana dispose of the body? If so, then show your proof and get it over with.
I'll say it again, Mr. Wright. Damon Gant is the current chief of police. This court will not tolerate any accusations against him without concrete proof. Well, Mr. Wright,
Your Honor?
do you have any concrete proof? Proof that Chief Gant murdered Detective Goodman and made Miss Skye dispose of his body?
Do I have proof? I don't think I have proof for this. I don't think I have proof for this. There's nothing that I have that has concrete evidence about this. The only thing I could say is Lana, but she's not saying anything. It's no use showing evidence I'm not even sure of myself. No, Your Honor. At present, I have no conclusive evidence.
Audrey. In that case, this court is forced to penalize you for your allegations against the chief.
What?
Here's a tip. Never gamble what you can't afford to lose, Righto. Seems that Lady Luck was on my side again today. Okay, I'll leave the rest to you.
Come on, Edgeworth, I'm really banking on you right now.
I warned you earlier, Mr. Wright. This is an affront to a senior officer in our nation's law enforcement agency.
Oh boy.
Objection!
Thank you, Edgeworth.
Lady Luck, Maybe we should have a word with her.
Mr. Edgeworth, what do you mean?
There's one lady who knows the real truth behind this trial. We haven't even had the honor of hearing her testimony.
Lady knows the truth. Another witness.
In the absence of conclusive evidence, the only other method of proof is testimony.
But Chief Gant has invoked his right to refuse to testify.
There's still someone else, one more witness who can answer all the questions raised in this trial. Someone right in this very room.
Mr. Edgeworth, who is this person?
Why are you asking me, Your Honor? Have you forgotten? The defense is the one calling witnesses today.
Mr. Wright, does such a witness exist?
She may not be willing to tell the truth. We can't just stop now. Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls forth
Take that!
Lana Skye.
The defendant is Lana Skye.
She was in the underground parking lot at 5:15 p.m. on February 21st. Her task to dispose of the victim's body in accordance with a certain someone's orders.
Mr. Edgeworth.
The prosecution has no objections, Your Honor.
Very well. The court will now take its final recess for the day. In 15 minutes, we will reconvene to hear the defendant's testimony. This court is now in
Hold on.
Huh?
Chief Gant.
Chief Gant, I thought you were going to eat.
It's been good, Lana. He's talking to Lana. I don't think you need me to tell you this, but if you accept Mr. Wright's claims, there will be terrible consequences. That's right. Your sister will be found guilty for Neil Marshall's murder. This isn't good. This isn't good. Of course. You'd never support such outrageous claims anyway. Right? Just something to think about. All right then. I've got a lunch date to meet.
Okay, if there aren't any further objections. This court is now in recess.
Crap.
February 20,
February 25th, 2:04 p.m. District Court Defendant Lobby Number 2.
Edgeworth, you and I have the same mood right now of, oh my gosh.
Looks like we managed to stay in the game.
Yeah, thanks to your help, Edgeworth.
that chief.
That's not even...
That chief, he's something else, eh, pals?
Detective Gumshoe.
I'm not a detective anymore.
Oh yeah, sorry about that.
Don't worry. I've already decided where to work now. At your office.
My office.
Sure. I'll take the place of that top-knotted girl you used to work with.
You're taking Maya's place? Could you mean Maya?
Still, looks like we're all out of moves now. Chief Kent's done it again. How is it he always gets the upper hand?
It's not fair that he has the right to refuse to testify.
Settle down, Wright. Remember what the judge said.
But chief, that's not the right to casually be invoked. There's certain risks to be considered. Just so this, so skip through that. Risks. What did he mean by this?
It's simple. If the chief refuses to testify, the opposite also holds true.
You mean he forfeits his right to say anything too? I don't know what this is. You're back! Thank you, Emma. Emma, you good? You okay?
Yeah. When I came to, I was in the medical office. I've been listening to the trial from the gallery.
So she heard everything that's been going on. Emma, I'm sorry for what I said before.
No, don't be. It was the truth. You know, it's funny. I almost feel somehow relieved.
Relieved.
Yeah. Now I finally know what really happened. To think that all this time, my sister was being blackmailed by that terrible man. And she did it all just to protect me.
Emma, you need a hug. And then, please, I don't want Gumshoe next to me, so come on, we gotta go away.
Ever since her appointment as chief prosecutor, everyone who knew her said she changed. Perhaps it was easier that way for her.
What do you mean?
What do you think I mean? To follow Chief Gant's orders. She must have shut herself up deep inside and forced herself to do anything and everything the chief told her to do.
That must be why she became so cold.
It was all my fault. It's all because I murdered Mr. Marshall. Hey, don't go blaming yourself now. If you want to blame anyone, blame society, pal.
Get him, Gumshoe. Blame society.
Chief Gant may be able to fool everyone with his forgery, but he can't fool my memory. I remembered now. I knocked Mr. Marshall into that armor.
I see.
Well, we better get back. It's time for the final act.
Emma, why don't you wait here?
No, I'm going with you. I want to be there when Lana tells the truth. Let's go, Wright. It's time to end this.
To be continued. Bit of a longer episode, but we are at the to be continued. This feels like we're approaching the end of the game, so I'm hesitantly excited. But thank you very much, everyone, for listening, for supporting the Ahdurin region in any way, shape, or form that you do. Next time, we see if Lana confesses to anything. Until next time, everyone, take care.